But first, let's focus on the overall India numbers. Let's take a look at where we stand today. The total number of cases, 28,380. Deaths are 886. In the last 24 hours, new cases are 1396, deaths are 56. The worst hit states, Maharashtra, Gujarat and Delhi. If you look at the numbers, particularly Maharashtra and Gujarat, they add up to more than 50% of the cases and deaths at the moment. As I said, I'll be joined by top guests at the moment. From Thomas Isaac, Kerala's Finance Minister, Dr. K. Sudhakar, Karnataka's Medical Education Minister, Manish Tiwari, Congress's MP and spokesperson, and Swapan Dasgupta, Rajya Sabha MP, will join us. But before that, let's tell you our top story tonight. The Prime Minister has held a marathon 3-hour meeting with state chief ministers on the road ahead in the fight against coronavirus. The meeting was a discussion on whether the lockdown must be extended and also addressed concerns of state governments. But the big question, does the government really have an exit plan strategy, or are we simply now going to move from one lockdown to another? It's our top story tonight.
A week to go for lockdown 2.0 to end. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a meeting with chief ministers to decide on an exit strategy. At the end of the marathon meeting, one thing became clear. The lockdown could continue in COVID red zones, but with more relaxation in other areas. Sources have told India Today the Prime Minister has asked the Chief Minister to decide on lifting the curbs based on red, orange and green zones in their states. Prime Minister also told the Chief Ministers to prepare a detailed plan on how to ensure a phased exit from the lockdown. 9 Chief Ministers spoke during the meeting, addressing several concerns in the COVID fight. 4 Chief Ministers, including Naveen Patnaik, were in favour of extending the lockdown. The Odisha Chief Minister wants a lockdown to be extended by at least another month.
आमच्या म्हणण्याचं की लॉकडाऊन एक्सटेंड करतो म्हटल्यार इकॉनॉमिकल जे आसा एक्टिविटीज जे आसा विदीन द स्टेट इट शूड कंटिन्यू बॉर्डर सील उरच्यो देयर इज नो ट्रेन नो प्लेन नो पब्लिक
अभी दिल्ली को लेकर जो तस्वीर दिखाई दे रही है वो 3 मई के बाद मतलब 3 मई करीब आने पे ही तय होगा और 1-2 दिन बाद 2-3 दिन बाद सारे स्थितियों का आकलन करते रह के तय कर पाएंगे.
Several chief ministers demanded funds from the centre.
The government of India should give us an economic package. We are giving rise to the families also. Therefore, the government of Puducherry has to be financially helped by the government of India.
The Prime Minister assured the chief ministers the economy is in good shape. He seemed to suggest a two-pronged approach. Continue the fight against the virus while giving importance to the economy.
The lockdown is all set to be extended for the second time. But this time around, the states will be driving it. And they will be deciding where to ease the restrictions and where to keep the containment extremely strict. With Bureau Inputs, Rahul Srivastava for India Today.
Okay, so the key now to any exit plan is this map that I'm about to show you. Take a look at the map of the so-called green zones, red zones and orange zones. Remember, the green zones are those non-infected, and this is large parts of eastern and India in particular, across the northeast into Odisha. As you look at this map, 350 non-infected districts. This is where the government is talking about easing restrictions. 207 non-hotspot districts with clusters are effectively the so-called orange zones. Then you have 47 districts, hotspot districts with clusters located where you have containment. So this actually spreads right across the country, and this is the problem. How do you move from one district to the other when there are relaxations in some districts and other districts continue to have containment zones? And then you have the 123 hotspot districts with large outbreaks. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Delhi, going into Uttar Pradesh, there is where you have hotspot districts. But can you really divide India so neatly? Particularly, let's say a truck has to travel from one district to another. Will you really be able to allow free movement of goods and labor? That's the challenge. And that's why I want to raise some big questions. It's all very well to talk about extending the lockdown. Is it a necessity now, or has it become excessive? Let's raise that big question on the lockdown 3.0, as we are now calling it. How will it actually work on the ground? That's what I want to raise. Is lockdown 3.0 inevitable, or is it excessive? Does India have a lockdown exit plan? We didn't see that really in today's meeting. Is the lifting of the lockdown in phases an option, the only option? How do you really find this balance the Prime Minister is talking about between lives and livelihoods? Special guest Manish Tiwari, Senior Congress MP and spokesperson. Swapan Das Gupta is the Rajya Sabha MP of the Congress. Thomas Isaac is Kerala's Finance Minister. And Dr. K. Sudhakar is Karnataka's Medical Education Minister and was present at today's meeting. I want to come to you, Thomas Isaac, because you are someone from a state which claims that you have an exit plan ready. Do you believe that the exit plan has to include this red, green and yellow zones, that you have a phased exit? Is that really possible until you allow free movement of men and material, sir?
No, you can have the same approach. First, I think we have to learn to live with this COVID-19. Coronavirus is not going to exit, say, in the next few months. Till a vaccine is found. Are we going to lock down till the end of the year? Therefore, you need to adopt a flexible policy. The virus will be playing hide and seek. So, when you find things slipping, you have to crack down. Otherwise, ease up things. In Kerala,
yes,
we would like to have a more flexible policy now, but we are preparing for the worst. You know what we are waiting for? 2 weeks from now, I am certain the expatriate Malayalis will be returning. We just opened registration yesterday. By morning, more than 1 lakh have registered. I think 5-6 lakh people returning from Europe, Gulf, other states. You know what is going to be the challenge of managing them? Therefore, we are very keen before their arrival, clean up, flatten out the curve, and then
sir, but you know,
put them,
but it's very easy to say flatten the curve, Dr. Isaac. You know, the worry is that you declared certain districts as green. Then there were certain corona deaths reported. Then the district again changes color in a way. I mean, are you telling me this is the way we are going to have to deal with corona? One day it's a green district, next day it becomes orange, third day it becomes red?
Yeah, what to do is there's a board. These are border districts, and now we have trace, and trace leads to external contamination. People contact with people from Tamil Nadu and so on. But still it's manageable because number of patients have been steadily coming down. Now, are we going to keep Kerala locked up indefinitely? Therefore, that's what I said. The virus will be playing hide and seek, and you have to be very watchful.
So you have to chase the virus. You have to chase the virus.
To start.
Right. The virus plays hide and seek, and you're going to have to chase the virus.
See, what we'll do is we'll quarantine all these 5 lakh people. We will now, to do that, there is an important condition. There is vulnerable section of people in Kerala that will constitute some 15% of the population. The age and those who have been, say, chronic diseases. They will have to be quarantined. That's the only way you can open up. They would have to stay indoors, perhaps in their own house in isolation. Our local governments are preparing for that.
Right.
You see, in my constituency, our local governments have already started this. We have identified the vulnerable sections, digitalized the data. We are going to start monitoring. See, so that's the exit plan. Okay, the risk is borne by healthy people who will go out to work. All the vulnerables will stay indoors. The expatriates come, they will be quarantined. It's tough, But life is tough here.
No, I understand. But it's interesting that at least you seem to have some plan in place. I want to go to Dr. Sudhakar for a moment, Medical Education Minister, because you were present at the Prime Minister's meeting. I'm told the overwhelming view in that meeting, Dr. Sudhakar, was to extend the lockdown. But a lockdown without an exit plan, Dr. Sudhakar, is a bad idea. Does anyone in Karnataka have an exit plan on how to relax the lockdown restrictions?
Absolutely, Rajiv, you're right that lockdown cannot be a permanent solution for facing this coronavirus. So this is the view of our government as well, and today the Honorable Prime Minister held a video conference of all the chief ministers, where I was also part of Karnataka team along with our Honorable Chief Minister. So he was telling in the video conferencing that the whole idea to go forward is to ensure the life and the livelihood should be planned properly, and especially on the daily wage workers, the construction workers, agrarian sector, the marginal people should definitely ensure that their livelihood is not affected.
Sir, those are all...
At the same...
So how? My point, Dr. Sudhakar, is how? How are you going to balance lives and livelihoods? You need a clear strategy. How are you going to operate between these red, green and orange zones? The moment if you don't allow free movement of goods and services, how are you going to save livelihoods? How are you going to revive economy? Where's the strategy?
See, in red zones, we have what is called as a containment zones. Because the red zones cannot be the entire district. Because in the entire district, for example, there could be one taluk, or in one taluk headquarters, it will be 1 or 2 wards. So we can have a buffer zone of another 3-4 wards attached to the red zones. We need to seal this down. And apart from this, we can release slowly the other areas of the district. But as of now, the plan is we are going to allow the agrarian sector, the rural industries, the shops and all other commercial activities in the green zone only.
You know, it's very interesting that you all are trying to divide the country so neatly into red, green and orange. But Manish Tiwari, you wrote a very interesting article where you said this extension of the lockdown now is subject to diminishing returns. And you said coronavirus is one thing, soon it will lead to a starvation virus. Are you also being a fear monger when you say that? What else is the government to do? Do you have an alternative to this chasing the virus, as Dr. Isaac puts it? Do you have another option at the moment to in some way saving lives and livelihoods?
Well, Rajdeep, the first thing that we need to understand, and I will reiterate what Mr. Isaac had said, that we have to reconcile ourselves to the fact that the virus is here to stay, and we have to live with the virus in the absence of a vaccine emerging. And even if a vaccine was to emerge, it's not going to be a foolproof solution. In fact, if you go back to a question answered in Parliament, I think last year, in 2018, 40,000 people died of H1N1 in India, despite the fact that there's a vaccination available. And also, there is treatment available. Tamiflu treats H1N1. So, under those circumstances, I can understand the dilemma of every decision maker, from the Prime Minister down to the STM. You know, nobody wants deaths on his watch. And so therefore, everybody is being extremely circumspect and cautious. But the fact remains that we'll have to take calibrated risks. And those 300 odd districts that you mentioned, which have been virus-free till now, I think you have to make a beginning out there. You need to ease restrictions in those districts. Keep inter-district transport closed for a while. See how the situation evolves in those districts. If things remain stable, you can possibly permit some inter-district movement in terms of adjoining districts. In addition to that, since this entire lockdown is being implemented under the NDMA Act, the NDMA Act mandates that there has to be a national plan. In the last 36 days, you have not seen a national plan. In the absence of a national plan, the state plan cannot be drawn up because they have to dovetail into the national plan. And in the absence of a state plan, the district plans cannot be drawn up. So therefore, you see, the thing is, Government of India, first of all, has to come out with those broad guidelines.
Right.
That this is the manner or this is the trajectory in which we would fight this over the next 6 months, and then give the states the flexibility to be able to adapt and adjust. Because if you just give me two more minutes. You see, if you look at it, ever since the virus was discovered on the 30th of January 2020, we've done about 6 lakh tests till date. We, in fact, have the lowest testing ratio among most of the countries in the world which have been afflicted.
Right.
But even at that very low testing threshold, if you look at it, our infection rate as a percentage of total tests is only 4.64%. Our mortality rate is only 0.14%. So therefore, if you need to look at...
So you're calling for the government to take a calculated risk in a way. You're saying take a calculated, calibrated risk of starting to open up from the non-corona hit districts. Am I correct? With a clear plan.
Not only that, Rajdeep. You know, you've almost had 11 million people or 110 million people, your entire migrant worker population, on the roads now for the last 1 month, struggling to get home. By government's own figures, there are about 43 lakh odd people who are in different camps in various states. There are another 99 lakh workers who are being fed by state governments and different NGOs.
Right.
And these 1.4 crore people are not living in the most sanitized condition. So therefore, there is a certain amount of community immunity or herd immunity which seems to be developing because our hospitals are not reporting that they are overflowing.
Right.
Or
that's a contentious issue whether herd immunity can be built so quickly. That's, I can see what direction you're moving in, and many doctors believe in what you're saying. But I want to ask you, Swapan Dasgupta, from taking up from what Manish Tiwari has said, the plan. We need a clear national plan. It appears the Prime Minister has these meetings with chief ministers, but we don't at the end of it come out with a clear strategy for the future. And that is creating uncertainty.
I think that's a misreading of the situation. I think one of the first things you've got to realize is that there are certain principles which govern the entire strategy in dealing with this pandemic in India. The first is that India made a very conscious decision, and you may fault that decision, but that was a very conscious decision, that we prioritize lives over everything else. Many Western countries did not take that decision. They wanted to straddle it midway. Second point, which we have taken a decision, again, which you might say, which I believe you're saying in effect, is that the lives of the elderly and those who have pre-existing conditions, health conditions, is more dispensable than the future of the economy. Now, to my mind, that is again something which in India we have not agreed to. Under the circumstances, we have now reached a position where we took an extreme position. And we're, for a country of the size of India, it was a really extreme position to have a national lockdown. Now, it is well acknowledged that this cannot go on indefinitely and that you must have a more sort of graded approach to the whole thing. And this exercise which happened today was part of the consultation in which how we move to the next phase of it. I think it's well recognized by now that the green zones will have far greater opening up then will prevail in some. That you cannot have a one-size-fits-all in the next phase of this.
The problem, Dr. Dasgupta, if I may just ask you, is the problem is moving from a green zone to an orange zone to a red zone. A friend of mine told me he has a truck. He wants to carry his goods across 4 states. Now, one of the states has a very different rule because it's a hotspot zone that the truck has to go through. Therefore, he's finding it very difficult to move the goods from one state to the other. So the practical difficulties in a subcontinental-sized country of first a national lockdown and now a national exit plan.
There are going to be difficulties. And I think Mr. Isaac was being very, very pragmatic and honest about it by saying that there are going to be a lot of problems, some anticipated and some completely unanticipated problems of it. The transit problem, which you're talking about, even if we are talking about not moving people, but moving goods, can we offer a corridor sort of solution? Is that viable? These are questions which will have to be actually looked upon in a more micro detail. And I think this 5 days or 6 days, which we have the time between now and the 3rd of May, offers a very good opportunity of actually getting this plan in order. Now, one of the one of the feedback which we've got, at least I've got, from many companies who've actually resumed operations in various places, some of which are in Karnataka, is that those who planned various things like their pattern of social distancing, their sort of procurement, etc., are today in a position far better than some of those who went into it after the lockdown and now are trying to start all over again. Now the question is, that doesn't mean there aren't any difficulties. There are a huge amount of difficulties. And one of the biggest difficulties are the different laws, different regulations, which seem to operate between one state and another, and sometimes the arbitrary powers of the district authorities. One district has that. So these are real issues.
Can I just take what you've said, Dr. Das? You made an important point. Can I just take it to Thomas Isaac, because he's actually dealing with a particular state of Kerala, for example. Dr. Isaac, one size doesn't fit all is right, as Dr. Dasgupta says, but should every state have the autonomy then to decide on how to go about an exit plan? Should it be decided in Delhi by the Prime Minister that Kerala cannot open up barber shops, cannot open up restaurants, or should it be decided by the Kerala government? Do you believe that the centre is using the Epidemics Act to bulldoze the states?
I wouldn't go to say that much, but I think to India, a subcontinental size that you said, you cannot decide everything from Delhi here. How can you think of doing that? You should accept the states do behave responsibly. They are in the front line. So you have national guidelines, and within that framework, the state should have the flexibility of operation. For example, you have been troubled with the question, how do we move goods from one state to another, district to district? Well, if you are not going to have freedom to drive around anywhere you want, to that extent, interstate movement of goods, inter-district movement of goods would be, there would be impediments for that. But within the district, why should you prevent the farmers from farming? Why should you hesitate to have your rural employment program out?
Sure, but he needs to take, the farmer, Dr. Isaac, needs to take his goods to the market. The farmer needs to take his goods to the market. Without opening up free movement of land and labor, none of these steps may work.
See, yes, that will be the limitation of the exit plan. You accept there are hotspots in India where you cannot open up immediately. Therefore, your exit plan would be limited to that extent. That's what I said. You have to learn to live with this virus here. It will be with us for some time, and life is going to be difficult. And there is no point in being inflexible, trying to have an all-India clampdown and so on. We had good, and it has had effect. That's also accepted. Now is the time to ease it, have it more federal flexibility, states to drop the strategy. Yeah,
Very, very
We are
good word.
responsible.
You used an excellent word
answerable
there,
people
Dr.
also.
Isaac. Federal flexibility. Now is the time for federal flexibility. Let me take that to Dr. Sudhakar, the Karnataka Medical Education Minister. Dr. Sudhakar, now without public transport, without labor, how are you going to achieve one of the objectives, which is livelihoods? The government at the moment, some say it's the center is adopting an incremental approach, slow, gradual approach. Has the time come for certain states to bite the bullet and make this choice, lives or livelihoods?
You can't take like that, Rajdeep, because life and livelihood are very important, and the government is taking a very, very calculated one step at a time. That is why we are taking such a slow, staggered approach in releasing the lockdown.
No, but in a state like Karnataka, where there are several districts, sir, which are in the green zone, many areas don't have any case of COVID, why doesn't the state like Karnataka bite the bullet now?
No, that's why today our Honorable Chief Minister had called another VC of all the ministers in charge, the bureaucrats in charge, and all the district administrations after the VC of the Honorable Prime Minister. So we have taken in principle decisions of releasing this lockdown in green zone areas. Of course, the public transportation, the auto rickshaws or the taxis, at the moment we have not started, because we would like to observe for the next 1 week, and then we would like to open up even in the green zone areas.
Interesting that
the whole idea is to make the red zones orange zones the green zone.
Okay, we're talking about color coding here. Manish Tiwari, you must also accept though that it's not so simple. That moving one state from a red zone to an orange zone to green zone is easier said than done. Just look at the numbers today. Even in the Prime Minister's home state of Gujarat, the numbers are climbing in all the time. In Maharashtra, the country's commercial capital hub, the numbers are climbing all the time. How do you then, given these climbing numbers in a few states, really go about, as you said, taking these calculated risks?
Well, Rajdeep, this is going to keep happening. Districts are going to go from green to orange and to red and vice versa. This is a reality that you need to accept and deal with. I'll give you an example. In Punjab, unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic started from a district in my parliamentary constituency, Shahid Bhagat Singh Nagar. The first 8 or 9 cases came from there. We cordoned off, contained those areas. Then people were isolated, they were treated. About 18, 19 people recovered, right? And all of us were extremely happy that we've had this recovery, and there have been no new cases ever since, I think, the 4th or 25th of March. And then day before yesterday, we had a case because somebody had come back from Jammu, some trucker, and he went to his village, and the Sarpanch reported, and he was tested and he was found positive. So therefore, this is going to be a continuous battle whereby you'll have to locally contain. Now, that's a decision which the person on the spot has to take. That do I contain that whole village? Do I contain 4 villages around it? Or do I contain only, let's say, a couple of houses around that house if the other members have not tested positive? So this is the federal flexibility which Dr. Isaac is talking about. You will not only have to empower the state governments, you will really have to leave it at the discretion of your subdivisional magistrates, your district administrations, to take
Are you saying the buck stops with the chief ministers then and the SDMs? Are you telling me today, look at Prime Minister Modi's position. If he today says, I'm giving every state the autonomy to decide how they want to frame their exit plan, and if something goes wrong, you will be the first to blame Prime Minister Modi, or will you blame the chief ministers?
Well, I don't think, Rajdeep, anybody is in the blame game mode. That's why I said this entire lockdown is being executed in terms of the National Disaster Management Act. Government is drawing all its authority from Section 6I and 10L of the NDMA Act.
Yes.
That same act mandates that there has to be a national plan. What Dr. Isaac talked about, national guidelines.
So you're
And
saying
with-
national guidelines with federal flexibility. Am I correct? A national guideline with federal flexibility.
That's exactly what the Act says, Rajdeep.
Okay.
And so therefore, if you're dealing with the pandemic in terms of that legal framework, then you have to take that legal framework to a logical conclusion and not just, invoke powers under it and not discharge your responsibility.
Can I take that to you, Swapan Dasgupta, therefore, that at the end of the day, the challenge is that is the central government willing to cede that kind of power and autonomy to the states? Mr. Modi at some stage may have to decide fighting COVID cannot be done in Delhi. It will have to be done in states. Give them the autonomy to take decisions. It cannot be as happened last week that when Kerala decided to open up restaurants and barber shops, the Home Ministry steps in and says, no, you can't do it. Or indeed the confusion over opening up of shops on Friday night.
No, I think, Rajdeep, the problem is that I think you've stayed in Delhi a bit too long. You certainly think that everything is controlled from Delhi. I think even now it's quite evident that the manner in which even this national lockdown has been implemented,
yes,
in the manner in which the health strategies have been implemented,
yes,
has varied from state to state, some with a great deal of success, and some with modest amount of success, and some with gross irresponsibility. Now, I take Mr. Isaac's point that most states are responsible, and not only are most states responsible, I think most politicians are also responsible insofar as they don't want a human tragedy in their hands under their watch. So they will do everything in their power to try and force. Now that it has happened, there's two things. One is that most people are responsible, but there are some people who are irresponsible. And I think we all know that some of the earlier incidents of the COVID-19 spreading across this country at an alarming rate was due to the principle of human irresponsibility. And we need
But
to elaborate
what
on.
Swapan Dasgupta, what if Mamata Banerjee wants to run Bengal the way she thinks? At the end of the day, she has to face the public of Bengal. Why not give her the autonomy to decide how she is going to fight COVID in Bengal?
If you want, like what has happened, say, for instance, into a particular part of the erstwhile Hind Motors, which used to be the old sort of ambassador factory, now quite derelict. Now, they've set up a huge quarantine center there. Now, in that quarantine center, they've made no distinction between, they haven't tested even in any rigorous sort of way, between those who are asymptomatic and those whose disease shows more manifest signs. Now, that's an act of grave irresponsibility. Now, if Mamata Banerjee, as to today, she said that those who've been infected with coronavirus can actually stay at home because we cannot have lakhs of people under quarantine. Now, to my mind, that's also an act of grave irresponsibility. Okay. Now, therefore, you must say that this might not be typical. But say, for instance, in Orissa, they've handled it with a great degree of sensitivity, responsibility, as has been the case in Kerala.
Sure, but
now
the buck stops.
Therefore, the buck is therefore, it's a combination.
Right.
There is a responsibility of the center. There is a responsibility of the center in trying to give a certain fiscal stimulus. There is a certain responsibility of trying to give more medical, scientific data, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, health being a state subject and the overall guidelines and the NDMA Act is there. This war against coronavirus cannot be fought unless both the center and the states act with an equal degree of sensitivity and responsibility, which does not mean to say that there isn't any flexibility.
Sure,
that
okay.
Flexibility has been there, and that flexibility has been there, and I think we are going to see it taken to another stage after the 3rd of May.
You've made your point. I have 30 seconds that I want to get you, Dr. Isaac. What happens post May 3rd? Dr. Isaac, post May 3rd, do you continue chasing the virus?
Yes.
What happens post May 3rd? Continue to chase the virus?
See, that's when a real trial for Kerala begins. Once the lockdown is withdrawn, I told you, we have started registering the expatriates who wants to come back to Kerala.
So you're starting the first steps.
Herculean task here.
First
Testing
steps.
each one of them,
Sure.
quarantining every one of them.
So actually the bigger challenge for a
old
state.
and vulnerable.
Sure. The bigger challenge in a sense for a state, more
Yes,
than even the lockdown plan, is an exit plan. The real challenge begins now. How do you achieve a lockdown plan? It's been fascinating to
That's
have
right.
4 articulate voices
That's right.
telling us what they think could be the way forward. I appreciate all 4 of you joining me here on the news today. Let me turn from the politicians to someone who may well have an exit plan. I'm joined by one of the country's leading doctors. Dr. Devi Shetty has just written in this morning's Times of India an article along with Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, who I had last week, suggesting that the time has come now to slowly lift the lockdown. Dr. Shetty, from a medical perspective, there will be those who are worried about, will lifting the lockdown lead to an incalculable number of people flooding our hospitals? Why then are you advocating slowly lifting the lockdown now, sir?
We need to lift the lockdown because we can't have the lockdown forever, because economic activity has to resume. If you don't resume now, you have to do it after 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and you will encounter the same problem. Virus is not going to go away for at least 1 more year, but you can have a very clear strategy of containing the virus after the lockdown. Our entire strategy now should shift towards districts, and every district should be empowered to do as many tests as possible. And the district should be judged not on the number of positive cases. The district should be judged by the number of tests they have performed and the number of people who die following COVID. And every state should have a software which should give real-time data on district level basis. It is not the state level or India. You can't just, the biggest problem what we are facing today is India is produced as one country. We have to break India into all the 32 states what we have. It's like comparing Italy's results with the German results. They are totally different. So you will notice that some states will do well, some states may not do that well. And there has to be healthy competition in terms of doing the test, reporting it, containing the infection, and making quarantine happy for the patient. The biggest problem why people are opposing quarantine and testing is because the moment you test them positive, you put them in a government hospital. 90% of the COVID patients don't even need to go anywhere near the hospital. Positive patients, they can be quarantined at home. If you don't trust, at least arrange a decent accommodation for them in a hotel for 2 weeks. Give them good food and a Wi-Fi connection. That's all you need. They won't run away. And unless we change our strategy, we are not going to win. The number will increase and there will be serious problem.
Are you therefore saying what Thomas Isaac today put and Manish Tiwari, that we've got to live with the virus? That much as we've lived with other infectious diseases over the past, the time has come to live with the virus, that we are now in that kind of safe zone where we can actually start looking at a lockdown being lifted? Is that what you're saying, doctor, from your medical experience?
Exactly. This is the right time and we should do it because very few districts have more than 20 or 30 or 50, or some districts may have 100 or 150. But they are very few. They are only capital cities of the state. So when you have 20, 30, 50 positive patients at any given time, with the 3, 4, or 4 times more number of contacts who are not positive yet, it is not difficult to contain. We have a very good infrastructure, but our focus should not be on the country or the state. It has to be on the district, and district should be empowered to execute all these action plans.
Do you believe, though, doctor, it is possible to neatly divide the country into these red, green and yellow or orange zones, that the focus of the health emergency will be on the red zones and the rest of the country can have normal activity? How do you really normalize the activity without free movement of goods and labor?
See, if you break it down to districts and identify the mini hotspots of somebody having a COVID in a house and maybe few square meters around the house, and just quarantine that area and try to isolate as many people as possible. You may not have to even go for a quarantining huge blocks of city or a village and making it uncomfortable for the people living there. See, essentially your idea is to prevent spread, and spread happens from a positive person. And you can't do it with doing the number of tests what we are doing. We have to extensively increase the number of tests. We have to pool the blood and then do pool the specimens and then do the tests. And it is possible. We need to have at least 30 to 50 to 100 testing centers in every state. Right now, that is not happening.
I need to ask you this though, Doctor. When you say that we bring down the plan down to districts, are we saying that in that districts, all shops can open, in that district allow full transport? If a district today does not have COVID patients, let it return back to life as it was before the lockdown was operationalized? Are you saying, or do you put in protocols from now on, compulsory wearing of masks, social distancing, and then allow the district to open up?
I will like to initiate, everything should be done in a phased manner. Schools, colleges, social activity, the religious gatherings, everything should be controlled. It cannot happen.
Yes.
But economic activity must happen. Our whole emphasis is that a barber or a maid or the people who are earning daily wages, they have to get back for work. And it is possible to allow it to happen without really endangering the whole district.
Dr. Devi Shetty, you have given in a sense a solution that you believe will work. Take this battle to the districts, decentralize, empower the districts, and that is where the COVID fight will be won. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining me and giving us a sense of why you believe the time has come for a phased exit out of lockdown 2.0. Thanks very much, Dr. Shetty. We'll keep getting back to you as we face the lockdown. Let's take a break. When we return...
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.